So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joel Santos. I am your host for this Thames International Business School Ask Me Anything livecast. Okay. So, Diane, is my video on? Yeah. So, one of the things that we will discuss today actually is a very interesting. One of the most interesting person is actually called the rock star. And I'll introduce him a little bit. He's the rock star in the whole fintech and banking industry. Okay, so I just want to talk to you first about the format of the live cast. For the first 30 minutes, it will be a one-on-one between myself and Mr. Tito Ortiz for 30 minutes. And usually due to the large volume of attendees, we put everybody on mute first. Please put your comments on the chat tab. And for questions, please post it in the Q&A tab in advance. And then one of the unique things about this live cast is we give a lot of time for Q&A, after the one-on-one session. So another 30 minutes for Q&A. And just to make it interesting, you can actually volunteer to be a panelist later. And if you want to be a panelist and ask the questions, you have to come out live on video and we have to know who you are and all of that. So we will give that option later. So welcome, and let me introduce to you our special guest. For those whose first time, it's their first time, I also want to say that for those who know me, my style is a little bit casual, so I'm not too formal. So don't get shocked with the way things are done. So let me introduce to you Dr. Justo Tito Ortiz. He's the chairman of Unibank. So, he's actually always been thought of as a visionary with a constancy of purpose. He has taken Unibank to the forefront of innovation in the financial services industry. And one of the things that he always talks about is that Unibank is a technology company and also a bank. So it's a big shift, right? Because that's why our discussion today is about transformation. Because when you usually talk to somebody from a bank, you ask them, so what do you do? I'm a banker. But the way he describes Unibank now, it is a technology company and also a bank. And we'll ask him a little bit about that. So he has under his leadership, the country has recognized Unibank as the best digital bank, both by Asia Money and the Asia Asset AAA Awards. He's chairman of the FinTech Philippines Association and the Distributed Ledger Technology Association of the Philippines, as well as the Philippine Payments Management. He's also a board member of the Global FinTech Alliance's Advisory Board in Copenhagen, Denmark. So he just recently retired as Unibank CEO in 2018. He still remains as chairman, and one of the things he continues to advocate is really financial inclusion through Tech Up Pilipinas. And I will ask him to talk about that later, but it's basically a movement pushing for inclusive prosperity by helping SMEs, individuals, and corporates benefit from technology. Okay, so I would now like to introduce to you, Mr. Tito Ortiz. I will let him go on video a bit later, but before I do that and start asking him questions, one thing about Tito, we're part of a same organization, and this is the only time that actually I'm going to be going deep into my discussion with him with these things, is that Tito likes giving out thought-provoking statements when he's interviewed in media. So here in Bloomberg, and we'll ask him later, he says, banking will eventually be invisible. So those are very thought-provoking, statements. But the thing is, yesterday, I was actually quite alarmed because he came out in the papers again, and he says, look, Tito always does thought-provoking, but this was really a different type of message. Yesterday he said, he was contacted for a fight with Mike Tyson, So I investigated further, and then I realized that actually Tito Ortiz is actually gunning in for a fight, with actually Mike Tyson. But actually, that's a joke for all of those who know. This is the real Tito Ortiz. He's the other Tito Ortiz. So I don't know who's more famous, the Tito Ortiz, the UFC legend, or our Tito Ortiz in the Philippines. But there's a side to this whole thing. Asking for a fight, going after the big guys, is actually something that is very much Unibank, right? They went after the bigger banks in the Philippines, and you always think of it as a David and Goliath story. And we all know that they have won because they are considered the best digital bank. But knowing how Tito runs things, I don't think he only had a slingshot as a weapon. I'm sure he had other clever ways to win the fight against all the other banks. So there's the other story to the David and Goliath outcome. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tito shares with us later all the other creative strategies that he did to defeat the Goliaths in the banking industry. So these strategies that Tito has done has really brought Unibank 3 straight years. Para siyang three-peat, for those who are watching Last Dance, right? The Chicago Bulls story, right? They're going for their three-peat, and they did their three-peat. And Unibank just did their three-peat because they've been the best digital bank for the 3rd straight year. And that's actually where we want to start our discussion. But Tito, can you turn your video already, please?
Yeah, it's on.
It's on, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, there you are. So, Unibank is considered the best digital bank for the 3rd straight year. There's a whole story to how you got there. You find my Tito Ortiz joke funny? I hope you did.
Yeah.
So
I can add to it, but I won't.
You can what?
I can add to it, but I won't.
Okay, because I know you want to maximize your time, but you should add to it later. But we want to start, before we talk about the transformation of Unibank, why don't we go back and really find out where, our rock star, Mr. Tito Ortiz, actually started. Maybe you can tell us a bit about, all of these things, being the game changer, being the disruptor. Where did it all start? Were you like this when you were younger? Maybe you can share a bit about your growing up years and how you were formed.
Well, I don't think, I had a pretty normal growing up period, but a long 16 years in Citibank, which, has always been in the forefront of innovation, particularly in training local talent.
But you grew up in Manila or majority in Cebu?
I grew up in Cebu until high school, and then came to Manila for university and stayed on. But I think the epiphany in terms of this whole transformation story is really an evolution or a pivot that occurred maybe 8 years ago. And, and it's a funny story in a way because it occurred in the cafeteria of the Tate Museum in London when I was there with my family, and we were kind of late. It was closing at 3 and we came at 2:45. And the first part of that, the first station was tomato soup. So my wife got tomato soup, my daughter got tomato soup, I got tomato soup, and when my son came to get tomato soup, they ran out. So we went now and we carried on, came back to our table, and my son had thrown a tantrum and hadn't gotten anything because he wanted the tomato soup.
Okay.
So I kind of got upset at him, and I said, you got to be positive thinking. You could have gotten an empty bowl. We could have shared this. And I went back to the station out of just instinct, talked to the lady, and she told me, you know what? We're closed. So there's nothing in the kitchen. There's no one in the kitchen. There's no tomato. I can't ladle the tomato soup, but there must be tomato soup at the bottom of this pot. So why don't you hold your empty bowl and turn over the tomatoes, the pot, and the tomato soup dripped into it, probably the best part. And she told me, go back to your table. It's on the house. So what was my epiphany there? My epiphany was that we run a lot of our organizations with a lot of manuals, with a lot of compliance, with a lot of rules and internal regulations. And this person, this lady, would have been fired because she served outside of the hours. She served in a substandard way. And on top of that, she didn't charge. So that the epiphany there was that the moment of truth for customers are not in the ivory tower of executives, but really at the touch points, whether digital touch points or people touch points, face-to-face of customers with our Unibank team members. And the question is, how do we make sure that the decision-making is values-based and compliance and purpose-led rather than compliance-based, of course, within a framework. And that's what started it, because as long as 20 years ago, in 1999, the cover of our annual report was mobile banking. And in 2000, it was about being the e-commerce platform of banking in the Philippines. But nothing happened until 8 years ago. So that really told me that the inspiration here is not about technology and the capabilities of technology and what you can do with technology in terms of products and services, but it was really about people. It was about mindset. It was about being customer-centric and being able to adapt, particularly in a service business, at the moment of truth and make a decision that was values-based and purpose-led, but maybe not necessarily following the book. And that started our journey of transformation, where
Tito,
we...
can I ask you, you said you know, by the way, guys, nothing is rehearsed. So when nothing is rehearsed, so when Tito said people, that's actually my next slide, right? So really by coincidence, right? You said people is the key there. This is actually my next slide. It's so easy to take pictures of Tito because he's always towering compared to everybody in the bank, as you can see in these pictures, right? So how do you, Tito, you had this epiphany, you felt there's a need to transform. What's the first thing that you told your team? Do you just go out there and say, hey, we need to change? You know, how did that whole process come about? How did you communicate it to your team?
Well, I think the first thing that we talked about was how do we get every union banker into it? Because the moments of truth with the customer are not with us at the executive suite. Yet we're the ones that make the decisions. We're the ones that put forward all those rules and regulations that are in the manuals. So we started out with very soft programs. So we had a lot of what we call middle out programs and everybody programs. And the point of those programs was for us to test how we could truly empower our people to make those decisions at the moment of truth without being off strat or without being off plan and being contextually within our framework of values and purpose. And when you state your purpose like, oh, we want to elevate lives and fulfill dreams and enable communities through the spirit of Ubuntu, you can imagine how that kind of a purpose would be disconnected from the teller or the security guard in the branch. I mean, that's a purpose that maybe a CEO can accomplish because they have resources, but not. So that's what we did. And what we started doing was the two main programs was our CSR program. So we decentralized our CSR program Anybody can do whatever they want to align their personal fulfillment goals with the institutional goals. We wanted people to find fulfillment not outside the bank, in their family, their church, their communities, their school, but also to find fulfillment within the bank. And we thought that the CSR program would do that. So they could do everything they wanted, anything that...
Like what? When you say a CSR program within the bank, can you give me one example?
No, so we call it Go Beyond Community. So anybody can do anything they want in their locality. Sometimes they do it at the branch level or group level. And it shouldn't cost more than 50,000, and they need to do sweat equity. And in the beginning, they didn't want to do it. Oh, we need to fill up a expense sheet. How do we justify? Many of these things are unreceipted. So that was the first issue. But little by little, we've done this now for 8 years. People now, it's very fluid. People are doing things. So that gave them the confidence, the psychological space to make decisions. So that's the first issue. Do people have the psychological space to make decisions? Or are they going to be beat up if they make a wrong decision? And then we did the middle. We called it a middle out strategy, where middle units could make their own goals, not the boss, anybody in the middle unit, and they could form a team within that unit and they could carry on. Then finally, when we built the ARC, which is our new branch format, paperless and several zones, discovery zone, a more interactive branch, we went to the board. It was presented. A budget was given. We didn't touch it at any senior level. The highest ranking person in the team was an AVP, made decisions, and when it was done 9 months later, 70% of what they told the board didn't happen, and it was 50% over budget.
Okay.
And that was the first time we actually, and it came out probably a lot better, more connected to customers, more relevant to them, and delivered in a more expert fashion, because there were no committees or armchair generals deciding the details of what the ARC should be. And I think that led now to the agile organization that we are performing today or organize, right? Which is more multifunctional.
But I think, you're agile now, but for people to appreciate, Tito, before, between the CEO and the teller, how many levels were in between?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12. But I would personally go down to the branches, surprise winners, because to build a culture, the anchor of a culture is something very simple. And we need to go back to our tribal days and our families.
Yeah.
And it's storytelling. It's kitchen table talk, dinner table talk. It's campfire talk. That's what builds cultures, the stories, the songs, the dances, the poems that people make and pass on from one generation. So we started storytelling, all these different interfaces with customer that were not totally by the book, right? They were, and this we celebrated. I would go, surprise the people, tell their story, ask them to tell their story in front of everybody. And basically that became now the body of knowledge, the stories. We have 8,000 stories now that produce our culture, a unique Union Bank culture built from the grassroots on stories of how we lived our values and fulfilled our purpose on the ground at every moment of truth. And that's where we are today. To me, all the technology stuff can be bought. What can't be bought is that human centricity, because part of the tomato soup story, aside from the fact that this lady at the station made a values-based, purpose-led decision is the fact that humans, our customers, have different circumstances when they come to interface with the bank. You know,
Yes. Yes.
they may be stimulated by the specific app that they're using. They could be circumstantially in a meeting or stuck in traffic or something like that, or they might have emotional issues or thoughts or feelings. You know, how was their day? And it's at those points, it's quite complex, where the interaction occurs, where the moment of truth occurs. So it needs to be hyper personalized. In the future, that hyper personalization at scale will be possible when we have a purely digital end-to-end, from initiation to fulfillment process, where we can gather data. And if you connect that to outside behavioral data from debit card and credit card, you can begin to build a picture about each and every customer and interface with them with some contextual or cognitive insighting. But
So
in the beginning days,
Hmm.
it's the relationship manager who needs to interface with the customer. And each customer, or even the same customer in different days, may be feeling differently. And we need to have that non-scripted, authentic interaction at the moment of truth, so that the customer is engaged with us emotionally. So that's our goal, an emotional engagement with the customer, not just something you need to do.
So
Go
the
to the bank,
story,
pay a
the,
bill.
yeah. The story is the human element. And then around the stories and the human elements, the technology is built around it in a way.
Right.
So, you know, it's amazing to see how, you know, 10 to 12 levels down, right? Yours, that strategy is actually brilliant, because usually culture is put in a memo or is put in the annual report, right? Purpose, our, you know, our vision, our purpose, and our culture are all put on paper, and they're there, and they're not. It's actually a challenge for any organization, right? To bring the culture down, to live it. But your strategy of living, making the culture alive through stories is actually brilliant, because that's how we actually lived it. It's really about talking to each and every individual that you see out there. And you actually have this reputation, uh, you know, Tito, of talking to everybody. And you can talk to anybody. Like here, you're talking to the Prime Minister of Singapore, right? This was in the fintech thing. So so this thing of talking to everybody, I think, is a great strength. I even saw this picture of you talking to an inanimate object. So I'm sure you got some ideas talking to this guy. He looks like an angry customer. But in any case, you know, I wanted to dabble into to you as a visionary, right? I saw this quote in one of your speeches, and it says, "The future does not come from the present; rather, the present comes from the future." And in that, when you said this, you actually used this to say Union Bank is what it is now because you follow this principle. Maybe you can share with our audience first what you actually meant by this.
Well, I think it's particularly relevant in the current situation, where we keep talking about the onset of the fourth industrial age. So we're talking about a radical game change, not the usual movement along a particular paradigm, which was the third industrial age. And we needed to change our planning process on a more pragmatic basis, from a planning process that had one outcome and was anchored on building a better bank. So it would be akin to building a better horse and buggy, when we should really be reinventing ourselves.
Mm.
And this came from a study from Boston Consulting Group of 35,000 publicly listed companies. And they predicted, this was done in 2017, that the average life of a publicly listed company will be 35 years. And why? Why? The first, well, is hubris, mainly hubris. So we're successful, we're gaining market share, we're profitable, all of that. And now we move to the idea of just carrying on. When the reasons why people go beyond 35 years, when they have more longevity as an enterprise, is principally anchored on the idea of three things: innovation, obvious, having a purpose, which we discussed, which is really the foundation is your people and your culture and your values. But the third thing was the most difficult. It was reinvent yourself.
Okay.
Reinvent yourself. And that's when we said we needed to be a technology company, also a bank. Because what are we reinventing toward? What
Yes.
business model are we reinventing toward? The future is uncertain. We don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. So what we really needed to do was have a mindset change. We had to have a mindset change. One is from a 10% enterprise into a 10 times enterprise. So that gives you idea of what kind of scale you needed to have, which would be impossible to do in a paper-based,
Business.
officer,
Yeah.
checker, officer process regime, or in a siloed regime, mass market regime. It could only happen digital. Yeah.
Let's just explain what 10% and 10x is, so that at least the audience understands. So,
well, it's something that Google propounded, that if most plans, you grow 10, 15%, make a better horse and buggy, and you grow 10, 15%, making more of them, building more factories, opening more channels.
yes.
But 10 times means you need to think differently, because no amount of doing the same thing better is going to produce that dimension of growth.
Yes.
So it's not that that's what you need to, that's not what you actually will achieve, although it would be great. And many of these big tech companies have done so. But it's more important in the context of how is this possible? And you'll realize really quickly that whatever you're doing today, as great as you are, relative to your competitors, it won't get you to that number. And so now you need to think of that contextually in a future that's uncertain. And therefore, the single point of outcome that a planning process produces is not good enough, because you're moving into an uncertain future. It's good enough if you do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is we needed to think differently. Think about the future. Be flexible. So three things there, which I don't think we have time to explain, but clearly we needed to do a lot more design thinking, which starts with empathy, customer centricity, which I talked about earlier. As customers have more options, as the switch cost with digital become near zero, then now you need to be able to hyper personalize your product or service at scale. And that requires a lot of empathetic and iteration, pivoting, principally a culture of experimentation. The second thing is we needed to do more first principles thinking. And this is very relevant in terms of being able to take pieces from different industries to produce a new thing. I mean, the classic description of a first principles thinking that they use is a motorboat has a engine, skis, a ski boat, motor, hull, skis. a bicycle, handlebars and seat and chain and gears and wheels and a tank, a gun, armor and thread. And from that, you make a snowmobile. So you pick up the handlebar and seat from the bicycle, the thread from the tank, and the engine and skis from the ski boat.
Yeah.
You cannot achieve that if you're siloed in your thinking.
Yes. Yes.
You cannot achieve that if you don't break down to, I mean, you don't need to atomize to this indelible truths like a scientist, but you just need to be 1 or 2 levels deeper than your competition. And that allows you now to pick different facets of different industries that may be relevant, not to you, but to your customer. And the third thing is systems thinking, looking at things as ecosystems.
Okay.
The world is becoming complex. People are interacting. I mean, you just have to look at all the icons in an iPhone that any person has. And you begin to understand that to engage a customer, you need to engage them at multi-levels. So internally, obviously, we have centers of excellence that are very siloed. Legal, accounting, marketing, production, finance, etc. And externally, the same way, but broken down by industry. And I think the idea of collaborativeness, looking at ecosystems and how when you move one part, it changes another part. This becomes what is relevant when you engage the marketplace, right? Because most, especially corporate customers and even individuals through super apps, right? They're operating in an ecosystem. So we want to be their super app. And on the corporate level, they have their own ecosystems on the supply side and on the distribution side, and their customers. So the reality is our customers are operating within ecosystems, and all parts of that ecosystem have a opportunity for a banking transaction. And we want to be able to understand that in a streamlined fashion, not in a siloed fashion where you need to go in the credit card system to do a credit card transaction, and then you go to the investment system to do an investment transaction, and then you need to go to the loan system to do an auto transaction. We need to now put this together, and that kind of relates to what you flashed on the screen about banking will be
Invisible.
We need to be embedded in all these different activities that customers prefer to do rather than banking. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning all excited to go to the bank, right? I mean, you want to watch your video, your Netflix, your streaming or shopping or entertainment or be with your family. And if you're a corporation, you have your whole business flows and the banking should just happen. And for that to happen, we need to have a ecosystem way of thinking. So design thinking, systems thinking, first principle thinking is the mindset that we need to have. And that requires a very a culture of experimentation, of iteration, of minimum value propositions, because the future is constantly evolving and maybe much faster now because of COVID.
When you say this, I mean, for some people, they go, wow, diba? Galing, diba? But for some people, even in your bank, the boss says it, this is it. Some people say yes. Some people, it goes one ear out the other. And so what do you do with the people who can't seem to change? Is that...
Well, it's a long process. It's not something that we did overnight, obviously. It's very repetitive rather. I mean, somebody told me that whatever I say, I gotta say it minimum 42 times. So I don't know what's the magic of 42, but so I'm a nag. And then when you interact with people, the proposals they make, the performance metrics that they have, the different accolades or what you pay attention to. And then we did this agile, when we were ready in terms of culture, in terms of technology capabilities, we did our enterprise architecture, which is a very important exercise, creating the blueprint that we just follow without having to talk about it on an ad hoc basis. So we did ours 4 years ago, and we're still following that up to the end of the year. When that's all ready, then we can now do agile. And in agile, we have, I think, about 75 squads now. They're self-forming, multifunctional, no need to ask permission from bosses. There's a screening committee that approves. So depending on what the solution required is, a product solution or a customer solutions, they just come together from different departments and make it happen. And that's part of this storytelling culture I mentioned to you. They understand that that's what we value. That's who we are and why we do what we do, right? And their personal fulfillment is aligned with the institutional fulfillment. I discussed that briefly earlier. So once you have those elements together, which you could label broadly as culture, then it becomes easy now for a organization to work not with a looking over your shoulder or side to side internally, but looking outside towards the customer, being more customer-centric, being more human-centric in our approaches, and in that manner, being able to be engaging at an emotional level with the customer, which is our goal. We haven't achieved that, but that's where we're headed for. In the context that I mentioned to you, that the customers over time are gonna want hyper-personalized services, and we need to be able to deliver that at zero marginal cost. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. And that's totally different from the mass production systems that have run our lives to create economies of scale by specialization, repetitiveness up the learning curve, and doing it in large scale. But it's just a variant of, you can have any Ford you want as long as it's black. I mean, we've come a long way from that, but it's different from the idea of the bank. When I talk to the bank is paying attention to me and only me. Okay. So that's where we need to go, and we need to be collaborative going forward, working with others, embedding ourselves in ecosystems.
That's pretty, that this thing going back to the customer, right? When you said that the customer says that, feels that they understand you, then actually we're really talking about, trust, right? And, trust is a very rare commodity now, right? I'll just show this world leader. I won't talk about other leaders because we might get arrested. So trust is a very rare commodity. And then I'm gonna show this because you said this when people ask you what the future is. You said that Union Bank, your main product will be trust.
Right.
So maybe you said that in that speech that you made, I forget which one it is, but you said that everything will converge, and then our main product in Union Bank in the end will be trust.
Right. So if you go back to what I said, that your phone will be filled with apps, and you'll have any number of platforms that you engage in, even today. And some of those platforms, and what will now our role be? Is banking going to be a specific activity? Or is it going to be an activity that's embedded in your other activities? So we are betting on the latter. Of course, we're also going to try to be a great bank.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's no question about that. We're going to continue trying to be a great bank, but we also want convexity in our strategy. And the convexity is, what if we cannot be great at everything? You know, the technology is moving so fast. It's hard to keep up, right? The connectivity of the world is making it global, at least on the technology side. Maybe not on the goods and services side, but certainly on the technology side, is becoming global. You know, the only ring fence that we have today is the regulator. But the regulator eventually, like Europe, is going to move towards an open banking convention. And when that happens, then the customer now will have choice and low switch costs. And therefore may not be choosing one bank to the other necessarily, but will just be engaging in platforms. And we think that we can be the curator of those platforms that the customer engages in, you know, like a seal of good housekeeping. So if we earn trust,
parang personal shopper, Tito.
I hear many people, I started from this and then I didn't get my goods or whatever and blah, blah, blah. So I think at some point, we know there's going to be a lot of competition, not only from other banks, but from tech companies, especially. But still, who does the customer trust?
Exactly.
Where is the customer going to keep their money? What portal will the customer enter into that they feel safe going through in order to access whatever it is they're interested in? So that's a vision far into the future, maybe beyond my lifetime. But clearly, it means that the only real commodity that we can count on would be the trust of our customer. And that's what we need to work on so that we become a curator of platforms, a curator of apps, a curator of any kind of interface that the customers, I mean, you know, we're hosting APIs in our API marketplace. So the movement is in that direction, that if we cannot provide the service the customer wants because somebody can do it better, then let us at least be the trusted portal through which the customer enters in order to access that service or product. So we think that a bank, because of its nature, already has trust and can build on that as a competitive advantage.
I think that's, again, you know, part of from a strategic point of view. You are building on an equity of every bank, which is trust. But you're just bringing the word trust and executing it in a I think a 10 times model, right? A 10x model. Is
correct.
Because the trust of the bank gives them the 10 to 15% growth every year. But with your strategy of aggregation, you know, curation and being a platform, that equity of trust can maybe actually go 10x in terms of growth. And
that's very perceptive of you.
Sorry?
That's very perceptive of you.
You know, if you know, a lot of schools might not survive this COVID, so it's actually mine applying for a job also. So you know what? There's so many questions, and now I have to go. We went past halftime, Tito. I kind of expected that because you're like a walking encyclopedia. I mean, I could spend, you know, we could just listen to you all day. Halftime, okay? Because it's halftime, then we're gonna open the field to questions. So people, those who want to be a panelist, please raise your hand virtually, and then we'll give you access to a panelist. Also, because it's halftime, usually I insert my own selling pitch, right? Tito, you said you have to keep on saying it. So I'm going to share again my transformation story for those who've seen it before. One is that, you know, as a college, just like a bank, schools are the most traditional and the ones who have never really transformed. And then this thing is really making things really crazy. But from the time we started 20 years ago, we've always been a progressive college. We're the first international college in the country. We're also the first bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship in the country. And one of the things we've innovated is we internationalize education. So when a student comes to us, just like what you said, Tito, we are a gateway to degrees all over the world. You can graduate a Philippine degree, an Australian degree, a UK degree, or a Singapore degree. In other words, with us, our training programs, then they choose where to go. But they can also graduate in the Philippines if they want to. So as you were talking about your business model, I was feeling a bit, wow, somehow, of course, we're not like you, right? But at least somehow there's this work of collaboration and being a portal for different students and families. So these are my students. These are how many students who have graduated in the UK and Australia through our system. This is how we do it, a bit different. The big change, the big thing that we've been doing is that we have been technology enabled since 2 years ago. So when COVID happened, we basically became a virtual campus in 7 days. So we migrated to full online. These are my students. We use a Singapore platform. And again, right, we're not the best at everything, as you were saying, Tito. So we had to get something that Singapore was better at. So we use their platform. It's called FreeJu. And now all of our programs are online. I'm talking about everything is online. We're able to deliver it. And the biggest part is that all of our lecturers now are empowered to deliver it online. Because some people, when they teach online, it's somebody else's content. Here it is our content. So I want to just show you very quickly that it is not just a Zoom call like this that's online. It's more than that, because we're really trying to change the way, if you say banking, in banking, you're trying to change the way it is. We're trying to also change the way education is done. Diane, can you show a video of how we do our classes? So we're trying to change the way education is now delivered, because that's the requirement of the industry today. Not just the industry, but actually that's the requirement of how the situation, particularly the pandemic, is changing things. So you'll see in this video, Dan, kind of play the video, please. What you can see in the video is that we transformed not just the education portion, but even the student affairs side, because you cannot just say, okay, it's a virtual campus, but you're only delivering academic. We had to deliver even the student affairs, the student activities online. And that has been, I think, the holistic approach that we have done. So for example, we have a cooking demo, right, with the students, because you're going to be academic, yeah, that's okay. So what we wanted to show was that we also had to go through our own transformation. And just as you said in another interview, the pandemic has forced actually the customers to embrace digital banking faster. And what has happened with us is that the pandemic has forced people to say, yeah, we have to be open to online learning. But the challenge is, and that's I think where collaboration comes in, is that a lot of schools are not able to go online. And even our president, that's today, says, well, I don't want you guys to go back to school if there's no vaccine. So that actually is dangerous, because if the schools can't go back and conduct classes, then they don't have tuition fee. No tuition fee means there's no business and they're all going to close. So my pitch today actually is not about students joining us, but my pitch today, in the spirit of what Tito was saying on collaboration, is that there are a lot of schools that are in danger of not opening because they can't go online. So with our audience today, if you know a school who's having a hard time going online, these schools are in danger of closing down. As part of the Bayanihan spirit, Thames is willing to help them go online. I think at this point in time, that's what we need to do. Help each other as a community to right. So we have an open house. If you know any school that's having a hard time going online, would be willing to help them. We have an open house this Friday from 5 to 6 p.m. So I hope you can share this screenshot. So with that, for halftime, let's go through our Q&A. Okay. So many questions. Let me do one. Okay, it's been answered what it means that banking will be invisible. Okay, let's talk about this. You have one customer, his name's Paul Whiteway, and since you wanted to engage with the customer, Tito, I will read his question straight out. I'm a long-term loyal Unibank customer that finds your internet banking difficult to operate. However, although the tomato soup lady is now my customer relations officer, I would prefer to be able to do it myself. My business has introduced many customers to Unibank via TITFs, but most of them have switched to other banks because of the difficulties of internet banking with UB. Paul Whiteway from Cebu Expat Services. I'm reading that to you now, Tito, because you said you want to listen to customers. So there's one customer. Comments?
Yeah, so I think we need to get the specifics of his thing. Maybe you can text me his name, and we'll have somebody contact him, because, you know, I mean, in as much as he has a special problem,
you always have
our
to,
banking has award-winning. So we need to have a better appreciation of what the specifics of his problem might be, because, you know, I guess we're not perfect, but for the most part, we've had a lot of accolades for both our individual grade Union Bank Online and our corporate grade, which is the portal, which is both award-winning platform interfaces and app. So it would be, just text me his name so we can contact him. And
I got it. I'll send it to you. Yeah. So we have, just for the panelists, so we have a few volunteer panelists. So please turn on your video because we need that, and then introduce yourself. And then I'll give each one of you a chance to ask a question directly to Chairman Tito. So our panelists, can you please turn on your video and introduce yourself, and then I'll let you ask your question. Okay. So those who volunteered, what's your name, sir? First panelist, Handay Bai.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Handa Bay, half Filipino, half Korean, based in Davao. I'm currently engaged in the agriculture industry, specifically the export of Cavendish bananas. And I'm also chairman of the Mindanao Banana Farmers and Exporters Association.
Okay.
I'd like to commend Union Bank. Trust us, their main strategy has been evident especially in the past several years. And kudos to their leadership and execution. My question is, I've noticed that Union Bank has been aggressive in entering rather the online marketplace, and I've seen how efficient their system is especially when it comes to teaming up with other e-wallet platforms. What's next for you? What's next for Union Bank in the coming years? What can we expect from that company? That's my question.
yeah, well, I think so. There are many elements of banking, and most of what you've experienced today or what we've rolled out is in the payment space. So it's how to receive money and how to disburse money. We need to work on getting our processes digital and getting our customers onto those digital platforms. Like you're a banana grower, for example, exporter, we have a financial supply chain platform that we built together with IBM, which basically puts you and your ecosystem, both the supply side, who you buy stuff from, and where you sell stuff to, although it's mainly export, but maybe the local. So the next thing we need to worry about is credit. How can we give credit by using the data gathered in these corporate ecosystems so that we don't need to do conventional, give me collateral, give me your income statement or that sort of thing. We can actually see the POs, the invoices, the payment flows, the regularity, the frequency of money that we can do. And we can embed credit products into that system, not for the core, the principal who is already our customer, but really for the SMEs that are in the distribution side or in the supply side. So I think that's what we're working on already. And we have a few platforms. Like I told you, we have FSC for the big customers. We've recently have a suite of 4 platforms. Box is a payment platform. Centro is a website hosting platform so that you can have an e-commerce site. CCAP is a SME lending platform, and Global Linker is I would say a forum where SMEs can come together, exchange ideas, success transfer, learn how to solve similar problems by contacting mentors and sharing experiences, and most importantly by able to buy subscriber services, ERP subscriber services, salary or HR payroll subscriber services, sales management subscriber services. Because right now that's cheaper and more efficient than doing it yourself. If you're an SME, you can do a payroll service for 50 pesos per head count per month. So if you have 100 people, that's 5,000 pesos. That's not even the salary of one HR person doing all that stuff, filing SSS, pag-ibig, and etc. Right? So our next step really is to get our customers to go into this platform, which is a challenge, but I think now people are more open-minded to do it. And when we do that, then we can start working on credit algorithms and make credit available more easily, more safely, and from our perspective, more prudently, because it's based on actual invoicing and cash flows.
Okay. Thank you, Handebe. So Tito, I just want to share with you, something I hope you'll be, you measure how strong a brand is by their customer support. And so when we read out one complaint, you suddenly have 4 customers coming to your rescue. I have one, Araceli Monsada, saying, I'm a recent customer of Unibank Online Banking. I'm so far very happy making my transaction with UB Online. Very user-friendly. It has helped me so much during this COVID crisis. More power to Unibank. Next one, from Jack Arambulo. Unfair to look at this complaint in isolation. Every transformations are circumstantial, specific. It cannot be overlooked. Next, Caroline Tabora, as a user, and what I appreciate with the portal is all different Unibank business entity has an account with Unibank are consolidated to a single facility, the portal, where a user can switch from one business to the other. So you see that, right? When something happens, suddenly you have 3 people immediately right after that coming in to defend. So that's a strong testament of because like all things, I run a school, you run a bank. Nobody is perfect, and then we cannot satisfy everybody. That's an impossibility. But I guess, as you said, when there's trust between the customer and the entity, then no problem is unsolvable. Am I right from that perspective?
Yeah, and to me, a complaint is a gift,
Wow.
frankly,
Mm.
because it's an opportunity for us. Many times, you have a real complaint, which is a failure for one reason or the other. And sometimes it's a complaint that is root caused on an inadequacy
Yes.
in the service that we're providing, a shortcoming that we could improve on. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a complaint is a gift.
You know, for everybody, I hope that's another quotable quote from Chairman Tito Ortiz. A complaint is a gift. You know, most of the times, as Filipinos, we get so very sensitive when somebody complains about our service or our product, right? But again, mindset. The mindset of an innovator such as Chairman Ortiz. Okay, so many questions, and okay, who's the next panelist? Can you please show your video? Robinson C. volunteered, or Edgar Morphe, whichever can come up. If not, I'm gonna ask a question because we have so many questions. So, okay, so this guy, his name is Jim SM. He's from LA, California. Nice to see you, Chairman Tito. What does Unibank offer to strategic international companies such as us, Ecologic Omnicommerce? We want to enter our expansion in Southeast Asia, starting with the Philippines and the neighboring economies. It's a platform question, right? Great.
Right. So, I mean, right now our platforms are Philippine-centric. It's domestic. But having said that, we've done a blockchain remittance transaction with a Singapore bank through our I2I network. And we have some platforms that allow multinational authorized signatories to authorize transactions offshore for a local subsidiary. So it's more service level. I mean, obviously, the remittance, we have investment in PetNet, which is a remittance service. PeraHub is the brand that they use in the Philippines. So we do remittance service, but on platform, it's mainly domestic oriented, but we're looking at how we can expand globally. But we need to really get very good at what we do.
Another question. Do you think that time will come? This is from Dan Ventura. Do you think that time will come here in the Philippines that physical banks will close and we will all transfer to digital banking? Yes.
That's a tough question. That's one of those futurist questions. Okay, and it's a culture question. So when we converted our ARCs, right, we didn't close them. So even though we're looking at the digital strategy, we are aware that there's a cultural element in the social nature of most cultures, but especially the Philippines, and especially in the provinces. And so if it's to do a banking transaction, then clearly maybe digital will be the dominant. But the branches might be a community space. Remember, we want banks to be embedded. So we have in our ARCs, we have events in the evenings, hackathons, pop-up shops, whatever, meetups, all sorts of things, events that we host in that space, which we label a community space, and give people in the community opportunity to interact in our space and do non-banking activities, and hopefully they become customers. But I think there's a room for that idea of the branch as a community space and how to develop that further, but not sure how it will be far into the future.
Yeah, but very interesting your point of view of the branch becoming a community space. Yes, we have a panelist, Mike Abundo. Can you introduce yourself and which organization you're part of before you ask the question?
Hi everyone, Mike Abundo here from the FinTech Philippines Association. Chairman Ortiz is actually our chairman as well, so I'm really excited to be here. Chairman, amazing interview, lots and lots of insights. One particular insight I'd like to zoom in on, and perhaps you could elaborate on, is the role of Union Bank as a platform curator. Um, as you know, Chairman, blockchain technology has enabled decentralized platforms, sometimes even non-custodial platforms. How does Union Bank plan to position itself as a curator of such platforms?
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Well, as I said, at the end of the day, there will be many of such platforms, whatever they are, gaming platforms. The idea of a monopoly platform for a specific human activity like shopping, I mean, maybe that's possible, but unlikely. So whatever it is, we imagine that there will be competing platforms, whatever they are, in whatever technology, blockchain or centralized systems or anything else that's discovered in the future, and that customers will be engaging in them. And if there is a payment stream, a lending stream, or an investment stream that's involved, or an FX stream that's involved, we want to be embedded in those different platforms. So it's kind of agnostic. We're agnostic. But to disembed ourselves as well from platforms that we don't think are trustworthy of our customer. And over time, that's something that we need to develop, is use our skills, our risk management skills, our compliance skills, our know your customer skills, especially in a data-driven AI world, which are capabilities that we need to develop as a bank, to use those skills, hopefully, which may not be available in the same scale and intensity and level of technology to our customers, to be able to provide that and vet which of these platforms we're willing to maintain a relationship with, ergo platforms that we're willing our customers to engage in. So it would be more along that path, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mike. Fortunately, there's so many questions. This is what we have to do. May I suggest all of those who put in questions and queries that's related to Union Bank, please put your name and your email, because we're going to send it to all the Union Bank managers and they can get back to you. So before we close, just put your name and your email, your contact details, so that at least Union Bank personnel can get back to you. As Chairman Tito said, every complaint is a gift, but most of them are not complaints. Actually, when you look at it, all I have are affirmations and really a lot of questions. So a lot of testament to what Union Bank is doing. Really great work to you and to your team, Chairman Tito. I mean, it's all accolades, and that's why we're gonna send them all to your team, so that at least they feel good about it. So
yeah, thank you.
So I wanted to end by saying that we really thank Chairman Tito for joining us. We really thank Chairman Tito for joining us. My own reflections on these things. I'm gonna keep on take. I actually took notes with a lot of Tito's speeches. There's so much words of wisdom in each one. As I said, Tito, you can actually be a guru and make your own book. But I think the most important thing is what Tito said, is that he showed us what is possible. I mean, and when we see it as possible, we actually ask how. And what he showed us today, technology is there, but it goes back to the heart of it, which is the people. And even as far back as the people, going back to storytelling, right? As a way to build knowledge, as a way to share culture, and as a way to share values. So we're all going to go through our own transformation, because the situation in the pandemic is forcing us to transform one way or the other. But at the heart of that transformation is, as Chairman Tito said, it's really the people, and that's embodied by how he is as a leader, and how their team is at Security Bank.
What Security Bank?
Sorry, what did I say? Sorry, Union Bank. Sorry. Suddenly I lost all of my goodwill.
Yeah.
I was just checking if you're still listening to me. I have to say something about Union Bank, is that when I talk to all of your executives, I don't feel like I'm talking to a banker. I have to say that. When I talk to everybody from JP to RV, I'm not talking to bankers. I'm actually talking to tech guys who happen to be bankers. And as you said, right, Union Bank is a technology company that's also a bank. And I have to say this is my first time to really engage with union bankers, and that's, in other words, you're really walking the talk, because I experience it myself, that I'm really talking to technology savvy guys who are actually bankers at the same time. So thank you very much. Thank you for inspiring us today, and thank you for being a lot of people are able to do their businesses continually. I could see it in all the chats that they're thanking you, that in the COVID, they're able to continue their business because they are banking with you. So
thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone that has joined us in this conversation. I hope it was a fruitful one, productive one. I mean, there are a lot of stories to tell, I think, and hopefully all of us will continue making new stories as one country, and make sure that we carry our flag in the global community as a nation that's really maybe leapfrogging the industrial age and going straight into the fourth industrial age. So I think that's our opportunity space in the Philippines. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for attending. Please sign the evaluation form so that we can make things better. Thank you, and take care, and have a good day. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.